Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Today's video will be on decomposing a quilt block. Now, there's a little bit of background information that you're going to want to read before you get started, so please make sure that you've referenced the material on my website on the blog posting on May 23rd, 2015. I'm going to start by opening a new file in Electric Quilt. And I'm going to create a block, and for this I want to use patch draw. Because I am starting with patches in my pattern that I'm looking at, it's easier to draft the block in patch draw because all I'm going to do is basically replicate what the instructions are using the modification for the rules I described before this. Okay, so I'm going to do a patch draw block, and I looked in my instructions and they said the final block with seam allowances was 13 inches. So that means that without seam allowances it would be 12.5. So I'm going to put 12.5 in the width and 12.5 in the height. Now the grid I want for this is going to be a rectangle. And to come up with the snap points, I'm going to take that 12.5 and I'm going to just multiply it times 4, and that's going to give me a snap every 1/4 inch. I like to start with that. Even if I don't quite know where things are going to end up, I can always modify that later, but it's at least a good starting point. So 12.5 times 4 is 50. So I'm going to put 50 in the horizontal and 50 in the vertical. I am going to turn the graph paper cells off, mainly because, again, at a 12.5 inch size, it probably will end up being a little bit more distracting than I want to deal with. I'm going to start with these long rectangles, which per the instructions were 2 3/4 by 8.5. So I'm going to subtract a 1/2 inch from both measurements, and I need a patch that is 2 1/4 by 8. So I just like to start up in the upper left corner at the 0 mark. I go over to the 2 1/4. And I'm just using my pencil here. I release my pencil here. And then I click down on the pencil again and go down to the 8 inch, click it, and then I hold the pencil, bring it back to the edge of the block, release the pencil and put it down again, and then go back to the 0 mark. And at this point I'm going to double click and the patch is going to fill. So I will use my pick tool, and I'm just going to move that in place. Now I'm going to do the corner, and when I looked at the instructions, the suggestion was to cut that 5 3/8 of an inch. Now if you go and look at that corner again, I'm going to use rule number 2, which means I'm going to subtract 7/8 of an inch. So 5 3/8 minus 7/8 is 4.5. And so I'm going to pick up my pencil and I'm going to start at the 0, go over to the 4.5, click up and then click once again, go down to the corner, click, and then depress the mouse again, and then go back to 0 and double click. And so now I've done the corner piece. Now that's not the right direction, so I'm going to use the rotate, and I'm just going to rotate it until it is correct, and I will slide that in place as well. And again, because I've got the snap points, it will slide very nicely. Now if I want to do the base of the basket, those piece number 2, those per the instructions should have been cut 3 1/8. So I'm going to subtract 7/8 inches from that, and that is 2 1/4. So I will pick up the pencil and go over to the 2 1/4 mark, down to the 2 1/4 mark, and then back to the 0 0. Once I've got these done, now to do the other pieces, I can, well, the piece is selected, do a Control C, Control V, and I'm just going to rotate that using the rotate tool until it's correct and slide it into shape. For this one here, Control C, Control V, slide it into shape, into place. And then this one, Control C, Control V, and slide it into place. Now, I'm going to actually use another grid to do the rest of the block, but before I do that, I just want to fill in the remaining white space here. So I'm going to pick up my Poly Draw tool, and I'm just going to connect the dots to fill in that remaining white space, and then double click when I get done. Now I'm going to add that to the sketchbook. Okay, for the flower portion of the block, you can see that this uses like a Lone Star type of arrangement, and that's really more based on an 8-pointed grid. So the square rectangle format doesn't work as well for that. So I'm going to if I go back to my grid here, I'm going to do a block, new block. I'm still going to do a patch draw block, but for this, for my grid, I'm going to select an 8-pointed star. Now, if you look at my block again, I really only need 4 sections of that 8-pointed star, plus I'm going to need a couple of these outside pieces as well. So for each of these grids, I'm going to need to have a 3 by 3 layout. And so if I go back to my my dimensions on here, and actually this is already set to 3, dimension 2 is set to 3. If not, I would want to change that. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my Poly Draw tool, and I'm going to just draw one of the patches. And again, double click when I've got it done. Now, to finish this off, I'm just going to duplicate. So I can duplicate and duplicate another. Once I've got 3 of them done, if I select all of them and do a Control C, Control V, I can duplicate, put it down below, and then duplicate again. And now I've got one whole unit drafted. So now I can pick up the whole thing, Control C, Control V, and now I'm going to use the rotate. And so I can move that there, and I can do another Control C, Control V, and I can rotate again, move it there, and Control C, Control V, and I can rotate it one more time and move it there. How fast was that? So it's amazing, because sometimes people think in patch draw I've got to draw a lot more lines, but look at how quickly that came together. Now I also want to use my Poly Draw tool and do these outside pieces as well. And again, double click, which fills the patch. And the last one there. Okay, and I'm going to add this to my sketchbook. Now, what I want to do here is actually select all of these pieces and bring them into my my previous unit that I drafted. And this is a little bit trickier, but I'm going to do a Control A, which is going to select all of them. I right-clicked, I'm going to copy it. Now I'm going to view my sketchbook, and I'm going to find that first block, and I'm going to select Edit. And now I'm going to Control V, and you'll notice when it comes in, it doesn't quite fill my spaces. But I'm going to start by just matching everything up in that upper left corner. Now, if you look at that node that's in the center there, and I'm hovering over it with my mouse right now, I'm going to drag my mouse and carefully bring that over so it lines up with that edge of that unit. Now I'm going to do the same with this middle node in the bottom here, and I'm going to just pull it down until it matches exactly. And now I have completed combining these two. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the sketchbook. And now we can work on the handles. Okay, for the basket handles, notice that these are pretty much just circles that have been cut off. And so I'm going to do that in the Appliqué tab. And I'm going to start by selecting a shape here. So if I go to the one that has that oval there, I'm going to select the oval. And because it's a circle, I'm going to have the Control key down as I draft. And I think that looks pretty good. So again, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to just bring that down for an inner circle. And now, if I take that outer circle and I select the Shape key on it, and I like this because it basically divides it there. Now if I select this side, right-click, and for an edit, I'm going to turn that to a line, and it just cut it directly in half. And I'm going to, again, select that curve on the inner one, bring that to a line as well. If they're not exactly right on top of each other, which of these aren't, I can go ahead and use the Shape tool and just bring those into alignment. Now, if I select both of those, I can again Control C, Control V to make a copy, and I'm going to rotate this as well. Now, this one doesn't have a separate rotate button, but if I use the Control key and hit that center arrows, you'll see that arrows appear. And so I can now take one of those arrows in the corner and rotate it around. And again, if I do the Control key and select that dot in the center, it goes back to nodes that I can move. And I didn't quite get that rotated, so let me just fix that. Okay, I'm on the Color tab, and right away I'm seeing a problem. I made too small of a basket here, but this is actually something very easy to rectify. So I went back and I looked at my instructions, and my basket was supposed to be actually cut from a 6 7/8 inch, which means that really should have been a 6-inch finished square. So I'm just going to go back to my pieced tab, and I'm in the rectangle, I'm going to create one more square that is 6 inches. Go down to the 6 inches there. And I'm going to move that. I want to actually select the one that I did before, and I'm going to delete that. And I'm actually going to delete that piece that was behind there. Move that one into place and just rotate it. And move it into place. And so I've just fixed my problem. So I'm going back now, and I'm going to color my block. And once my block is done, I can add this to the sketchbook. Now, to double check everything, what I like to then do is actually print a rotary cutting chart. And so now that I've done this, I can preview it, and I can double check and make sure that everything is working and tying back to the instructions in the printed pattern. For next week, I'm actually going to show you what I did as an alternative setting for this flower box block. Thanks for watching. If you do decide you want to do this block, please purchase the pattern directly from Laundry Basket Quilts. If you are interested in more tutorials, please subscribe to my blog and my newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.